She said she needed space, but I found her wrapped in his arms instead. Ethan, 34M, and Natalie, 29F, a marriage undone by an old flame. Ethan and Natalie had been married for 5 years. Before tying the knot, they'd dated for a couple of years. An easy kind of love that felt safe, solid. Ethan had proposed to her during a beach vacation, just as the sun dipped below the horizon. Natalie always described it as one of the most magical moments of her life. Natalie had always been a social whirlwind. Back in college, she'd built a close-knit, adventurous friend circle. People who traveled together, went to music festivals, threw elaborate themed parties. Her energy fed off theirs. Ethan, however, had never quite fit in. He was more introverted, someone who preferred meaningful one-on-one conversations over noisy group settings. Though he'd tagged along to a few gatherings early in their relationship, it became clear over time that he wasn't comfortable. Natalie stopped insisting he come, realizing it only made both of them miserable. At first, she resented his reluctance. She accused him of being dull, of holding her back. But eventually, she accepted that they were wired differently and stopped pushing. One weekend, her friend group arranged another casual get-together. Ethan predictably opted to stay home. That night changed everything. Out of nowhere, someone unexpected showed up to their gathering. Daniel, an old friend who hadn't been around in years. He had moved abroad for work, and the group hadn't seen him since. Daniel had always been a magnetic presence. Funny, well-traveled, quick with a joke and quicker with a story. The kind of guy who lit up a room without trying. He told everyone he was back in town for a few weeks, deciding whether to renew his contract overseas or start fresh back home. Natalie couldn't stop looking at him. He'd changed, toned, mature, still carrying that same effortless confidence she remembered. What no one in the room, including her husband, knew was that Natalie and Daniel had a history. Years ago, at a friend's birthday party, after too many drinks and a night of laughter, they'd ended up in bed together. It wasn't just physical. Both admitted they'd been nursing feelings for a long time. But days later, Daniel flew overseas for work, and their spark was left to fizzle before it even had a chance to ignite. Natalie was heartbroken for a while, but then came Ethan, steady, kind, dependable. She never told him about Daniel, chalking it up to a brief lapse in judgment and a story best left in the past. When she returned home that night from the gathering, she couldn't contain her excitement. She lit up while retelling Ethan every detail of Daniel's return. His stories from abroad, how funny he still was, how everyone was thrilled to see him again. She spoke as if she'd lived those adventures right alongside Daniel. Ethan sat quietly, the edges of his smile growing tighter with every mention of Daniel's name. Eventually, he cut her off with a biting comment. "Well, sounds like the Golden Boy's still good at making people forget there are other humans in the room." Natalie stared at him, her excitement dissolving into ice. She said nothing more that night. Just a flat good night, and off to bed. The following week, Natalie couldn't get Daniel off her mind. She thought about how easy it had felt between them, the way he looked at her, how alive she felt again. Even her co-workers noticed her zoning out more, walking around in a dreamlike fog. Eventually she caved. She messaged Daniel directly. The reply came quickly. "Would love to catch up. When?" That evening, she texted Ethan that she'd be working late and not to wait up for dinner. She met Daniel at a quiet little cafe. They laughed for hours, slipping right back into that forgotten rhythm. No alcohol was needed. Just being near him again made her feel weightless. When he suggested heading back to his place to continue talking, she agreed without hesitation. And it wasn't just conversation that happened. After that night, the affair snowballed. Natalie crafted lie after lie. Group dinners, office deadlines, birthday parties. Ethan never questioned her. He trusted her. He'd long since stopped involving himself in her social life, and that distance was exactly the cover she needed. Then, one evening, Ethan left work early and decided to walk home to clear his head. Natalie had once again said she'd be out late, so he wasn't in a rush. Halfway home, He ran into Brian, a mutual friend from Natalie's social circle. "Hey Ethan, where've you been hiding?" Brian greeted him with a friendly clap on the back. They chatted briefly, and then Brian asked, "How's Natalie doing? Haven't seen her in forever." Ethan blinked. "Really? I thought she's been meeting up with you guys every other week." Brian raised a brow. "Nah man. Last time we all got together was over a month ago, when Daniel surprised everyone." Ethan stood there stunned. It all clicked. Ever since that night with Daniel, Natalie had suddenly become too busy to spend time with him, too distant to look him in the eye for long. The pieces fell into place with an almost physical pain in his chest. He asked Brian casually if there was a meetup this Saturday. Natalie had mentioned one. Brian shook his head. "Not that I've heard." That Saturday, Ethan made a decision. Years ago, they'd installed a location-sharing app on their phones, for safety during hikes or travel. Natalie assumed he never used it. But that night Ethan did. He followed the dot on the map until it led him to an ordinary apartment building. He parked a short distance away and waited. Sure enough, about an hour later, Natalie walked out of a side entrance. She looked flushed. Her hair was tousled. She was glancing at her phone, likely calling for a ride. Ethan pulled up and honked. She squinted at the car, confused. When she recognized it, her expression turned to panic. She walked over hesitantly, opened the passenger door and asked, "What are you doing here?" "Get in," Ethan said calmly. They sat in tense silence. Finally, Natalie asked what was going on. "I know everything," he replied. "There's no meetup, no group dinner, just you sneaking around with him. Be honest." She tried to deflect, but he wasn't playing along. When she saw there was no way out, she admitted it. Yes, she'd been with Daniel. Ethan didn't yell. He simply started the car. "Where are we going?" she asked nervously. "To pack your things," he said. "I'm done living with a liar." The divorce moved quickly. Ethan was devastated but numb. He had no interest in salvaging a relationship built on deception. Natalie, meanwhile, felt oddly liberated. With Ethan out of the picture, she and Daniel no longer had to hide. She imagined a fresh start with him, moving abroad, building a new life together. But she forgot one crucial thing. Daniel was never planning to stay. He'd made it clear from the start. His visit was temporary. When she asked if she could come with him, Daniel hesitated. She assumed he'd pay for her travel, help with the visa, support her like Ethan once had. But Daniel wasn't that kind of man. He declined politely but firmly. He liked her, sure, but not enough to uproot his life for someone he'd just reconnected with. And that was that. Natalie spiraled. She messaged Daniel constantly. At first, he responded with polite detachment. Eventually, he stopped replying altogether. Rumor had it he'd started dating someone else back overseas. Natalie was left alone. No husband. No lover. Just memories she couldn't rewind and choices she couldn't undo. She buried herself in work to avoid the silence at home. But when the evenings came and the lights were off and the apartment felt cold, she was alone with the truth. She'd traded something real for something fleeting, and lost them both.